It was already past 11, the city's neon glow muted beyond the curtains of my apartment. I had been waiting for Zayn, waiting long enough that my eyelids grew heavy and my head drooped despite the caffeine I'd forced into my system earlier. My phone lay face up on the coffee table, its screen dark but expectant as if mocking my patience. The sound of a message ping jolted me awake. I blinked against the sudden light and saw it was from Nina Kapoor, my best friend. "Arya, quick, check Zayn's moments." For a moment I stared blankly. Zayn hardly ever posted on his WeChat moments. In the 3 years we'd been together I could count his posts on one hand and none had ever featured me. I had long convinced myself that he was simply too private, too reserved to flaunt affection online. But curiosity pried my eyelids open. I picked up the phone, unlocked it and tapped into his profile. And there was a freshly posted photo. Zayn Luo, immaculate in a tailored black suit, smiling with rare ease. Beside him leaned Lydia Fong, his childhood sweetheart. She was glowing, her smile wide and practiced yet somehow genuine, her head tilting slightly against his shoulder as if she belonged there. Caption read, "You will always be my pride." My heart thudded, the kind of hollow thud that echoed in my chest instead of beating life into me. I zoomed into the photo as if my scrutiny could change its reality. Zayn's smile wasn't the polite curve I was accustomed to in public. It was bright, unrestrained, an expression I'd never seen him wear when posing beside me. For a long, silent moment I sat there, phone trembling slightly in my grip. We were supposed to be married in less than a month. Invitations had been sent, the venue booked, every detail painstakingly arranged down to the floral centerpieces and the imported champagne. Yet not once had Zayn posted a single picture of us. I remembered asking him once, in a moment of half-teasing vulnerability, "Couldn't you at least post one photo of us together? Just so people know?" He had squinted, giving me that signature casual smile of his. "Arya, our love doesn't need to be validated by others. The less we share, the more it belongs to us alone." Back then I accepted it. Even felt flattered by the secrecy. I told myself it meant we were sacred, private, untouchable. But now, staring at his boastful declaration with Lydia Fong, those words soured in my memory. My gaze fell, almost unwillingly, on the coffee table in front of me where an old-fashioned magazine lay open. Across its glossy page was a luxury brand slogan in bold font. "What's hidden is dearest. What's shown is less beloved." The irony clawed at my chest. Was I truly the hidden dearest? Or had I simply been the one not worthy of display? I sank deeper into the sofa, memories rising like unwelcome ghosts. 3 years ago, when Zayn's company had been teetering on the edge of ruin, Lydia had left for graduate studies abroad. Everyone whispered that she had chosen ambition over loyalty. And I had admired Zayn's persistence then. Admired him enough to stand by him when his name was tainted, when creditors circled like sharks. I was the one who brewed coffee during his sleepless nights, drafted pitch decks when his team deserted, and sold the house my parents had left me just to inject cash into his sinking venture. Slowly, painfully, Luo Capital had clawed its way back. Zayn, brilliant and relentless, was eventually named one of the top 30 entrepreneurs under 30 in the Asia-Pacific. That was the night he proposed to me, slipping a ring onto my trembling hand beneath the soft glare of a chandelier. I had believed every word then. Believed that my sacrifices had found their place in his heart, that the partnership we forged through struggle would blossom into marriage. And yet, one photo tonight threatened to unravel everything. My phone buzzed again. Nina was calling this time. "Arya? Are you okay? You saw it, right?" Her voice was breathless, threaded with concern. I pressed my lips together, forcing a smile she couldn't see. "I'm fine, Nina. What could possibly be wrong? Don't lie to me. You know their history. Lydia and Zayn were inseparable back then. If you're unhappy, you need to tell me." I tried to soothe her, but in truth I was trying to soothe myself. "It's okay. We're getting married soon." Even as I said it, the words felt brittle. Before Nina could argue, the lock of my front door clicked. My body tensed. Zayn had returned. "I'll call you later," I whispered and hung up. The door opened and Zayn stepped in. The scent of alcohol hit first, sharp, laced with something sweeter, a perfume I didn't recognize. He loosened his tie with practiced grace, shrugging off his jacket and collapsed onto the sofa opposite mine. "Why aren't you asleep yet?" In the past I would have rushed to his side, kneeling to massage his temples, preparing honey water to ease his exhaustion. Tonight I remained rooted, unmoving. He cracked open one eyelid, studying me lazily. "What's up?" I gripped my phone tighter, nails digging into my palm. "Lydia Fong is back." Zayn nodded as if I had remarked about the weather. He studied finance in the States. "I've arranged for her to join the investment department." The words sliced through me with their casual delivery. "Why?" I finally managed, my voice trembling. He looked at me as though I had asked something absurd. "She graduated with top honors from Wharton." Of course I couldn't let such talent slip away. My chest ached, but I forced myself to steady. "And what about my matter? Have you given it any thought?" Zayn leaned back, covering his eyes with one hand, a sigh laced with irritation escaping him. "Arya, I'm exhausted. Can we talk about this tomorrow?" The finality in his tone ended the conversation. When I woke the next morning he was already gone, disciplined as always, punctual no matter how late the night. I moved through my routine like a ghost, slipping into a crisp dress, applying just enough makeup to paint over the sleeplessness in my eyes. My own company was teetering, its cash flow nearly broken. Payroll was looming, vendors demanding payments. If no investment came in within 3 days, we'd have to declare bankruptcy. Zayn had promised to raise it in his executive meeting. Luo Capital was my last hope. As I arrived at the imposing glass tower of his company, a knot of unease twisted in my stomach. The receptionist, a fresh-faced girl, eyed me suspiciously when I asked to see him. "Do you have an appointment?" I frowned. "I'm his fiancée." Before the girl could answer, a familiar lilting voice chimed behind me. "Arya Wen? Is that you?" I turned. There she was. Lydia Fong. Polished, professional, radiant in a tailored suit. Her lips were painted a confident crimson as she held a steaming coffee in one hand. "It's been years," she said, extending her other hand with an elegant smile. "Long time no see." Her aura was undeniable. And in that moment, for the first time, I felt like a guest in Zayn's world instead of his partner. I forced my features into composure and shook her hand lightly. "Long time no see." She swiped her employee badge and the door unlocked with a click. "Come on in. You're here for Zayn, right?" I just finished a meeting with him. Though she was technically his subordinate, her words carried an intimacy that stung. I followed, my heels echoing on the marble floor, my grip tightening on the documents in my bag, the ones that held the fate of my company. That was how I walked into Luo Capital that morning, not as the future Mrs. Luo, but as a supplicant whose world was hanging by a thread. And somewhere deep inside, a whisper had already begun. Maybe I wasn't the pride. Maybe I had only been the placeholder. The marble floor beneath my heels clicked sharply with each step as I followed Lydia Fong through the glass atrium of Luo Capital. Sunlight streamed through the high ceilings, glinting off steel beams and polished chrome, illuminating the kind of opulence only companies with billion-dollar valuations could afford. It should have felt familiar. I'd been here dozens of times before. Yet today, everything felt alien, as though I'd crossed into a world where I no longer belonged. Lydia swiped her employee badge again at another access point, holding the door open for me with the kind of effortless grace that carried a hint of condescension. "You're here to see Zayn, right?" she asked, her crimson lips curling slightly. "He just finished with me. He should be free now." Just finished with her. The words stuck in my throat like a fishbone. Though she said it lightly, the implication was clear. She was already embedded in his schedule, in his world, as though she'd never left. I forced a smile. "Thanks. I'll go on ahead." Her eyes sparkled with something unreadable, mockery, pity, or maybe amusement, as she nodded and turned away, heels clicking with a confidence I envied and resented all at once. I moved through the sleek office corridors lined with floor-to-ceiling glass partitions. Inside, teams huddled around glowing screens, analysts scribbled equations across whiteboards, executives tapped out brisk emails. The hum of ambition filled the air. At the end of the corridor stood a set of double doors, Zayn Luo's office. But before I could push them open, a tall figure stepped into my path. Leo Pan, Zayn's assistant. "Miss Wen," he said with a polite but firm smile, spreading his arms slightly to block me. "You're here." I arched a brow. "Yes. I need to see Zayn." He hesitated as though weighing the right words. General Manager Luo just came out of a meeting. He has matters to handle. Perhaps you could wait here in the lounge for a bit. A sharp laugh escaped me before I could stop it. Since when do I need an appointment to see my own fiancé? Leo's expression remained practiced, professional. It's not that, Miss Wen. Just preoccupied. Let me prepare some coffee for you while you wait. No need, I snapped, clutching the folder in my hand tighter. I'll wait right here. I sat in the reception area outside his office, my back stiff against the leather chair. The folder containing my company's survival plan rested on my lap, its weight heavier than stone. Inside were financial reports, market analyses and projections, documents that represented the last 3 years of my blood, sweat and nights spent in near collapse. If Zayn signed off on an investment today, my company could breathe again. If he didn't, we had 3 days left before bankruptcy. 3 days. I traced the edge of the folder with my fingertip, willing my heartbeat to steady. Just then a familiar voice sliced through the air. Leo, President Luo wants to see me now. I didn't need to look up to recognize it. Lydia Fong. My chest tightened. Through the corner of my eye, I saw her stride past me without hesitation, swiping her card to open the double doors before disappearing inside. For a moment I sat frozen, heat burning behind my eyes. Vice President. She had been back in the country for mere weeks, yet she already walked these halls with authority, carrying a title I once dreamed of. When Luo Capital had recovered years ago, I had asked Zayn, half seriously, half in hope, if he would consider me for an executive position. A vice president role, perhaps. I had been with him through every sleepless night, through every collapsing deal. I knew the company as intimately as I knew the lines on my palm. He had laughed softly and kissed my forehead. Arya, you're not meant to exhaust yourself in the office. You should resign from your little company, stay by my side and live comfortably as my wife. I hadn't accepted that. My pride rebelled and I'd gone on to found my own startup, stubbornly determined to prove myself. And now here I sat, begging him for the investment that might save me, while Lydia walked in and out of his office as though she were born to it. The doors shut behind her. I heard faint laughter inside, light, silvery, free. Laughter that had no place in Zayn's office. He was serious at work, always clipped and controlled. No one dared to laugh in front of him. No one, apparently, except Lydia Fong. Needles pricked my chest with each sound. I stood abruptly, ready to storm out. To hell with begging. To hell with everything. But then my gaze fell back to the folder in my hand, the contracts that held my team's livelihoods. Faces flashed through my mind. Taragua, my operations lead who had taken a pay cut to stay. The interns who believed in me enough to work unpaid overtime. The engineers who built product features through nights of cold takeout and flat coffee. I sank back into my chair. I couldn't abandon them. Not yet. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours before the doors finally opened again. Lydia emerged, perfume trailing behind her, her smile flawless as always. Arya, Zayn's free now. You may go in, she said sweetly, as though she were the hostess of this house and I merely a guest. Thank you, Vice President Fong, I replied evenly, making sure the title dripped with sarcasm. Her smile didn't falter, but something flickered in her eyes before she turned and left. I stepped into Zayn's office. The first thing that hit me was the faint lingering trace of her perfume, floral and sharp, curling in the air like invisible fingers around my throat. I sneezed involuntarily, irritated both by the scent and its reminder. Zayn sat behind his massive mahogany desk, posture straight, suit crisp, face expressionless. The man I used to see as my anchor now looked every inch the untouchable sea. What brings you here? He asked, voice cool and businesslike. I swallowed the lump in my throat and handed him the folder. Have you decided about investing in my company? He didn't take it. His eyes flicked to the folder, then back to me, his expression unreadable. After deliberation by senior management, he said finally, we've decided not to invest. The words hit harder than I expected, even though I had steeled myself. My knees weakened, but I forced myself to remain standing tall. Zayn continued as though giving a quarterly report. Please understand, Arya. Business is business. We have a strict evaluation process. Your company did not meet the criteria. I clenched my fists at my side, nails digging crescents into my palms. Zayn, we both know my company's fundamentals are sound. We just need liquidity to bridge this period. Why? His gaze hardened. It's not personal. But on his desk, among neatly stacked papers, my eyes caught a document lying open. Across the top in elegant handwriting were the words. After thorough consideration by the investment department, the proposal for one tech has been rejected. At the bottom was a signature. Lydia Fong. My chest constricted. Of course. I bit my lip until I tasted blood, then forced a smile that hurt to wear. Thank you for your time, President Luo. Without waiting for a reply, I turned on my heel and walked out. The glass walls blurred as I strode through the corridors. I barely registered the curious glances of employees as I passed, folder still clutched in my hands like a corpse I couldn't bury. By the time I stepped onto the street outside, the sharp winter air slapped me awake. I stumbled forward, aimless, the city's lights spinning in my vision. My company was doomed. My wedding was a farce. My 3 years of sacrifice, worthless. Memories flooded me unbidden. The anniversaries he had never forgotten, the nights he stayed with me when I was sick, the way he once looked at me as though I were his compass. All of it swirled together with the bitter truth that he had never once shown me to the world. Now Lydia Fong was back and he was ready to announce her as his pride, his partner, his everything. Perhaps he did love me once. But some loves are placeholders, existing only until the person they truly wanted returned. When the one he cherished more came back, what was left of me but a compromise? I wandered aimlessly, each step echoing with the hollow sound of endings. Maybe it was time to stop holding on. Maybe it was time to let go. The streets blurred around me as I walked aimlessly, the chill biting my skin but failing to numb the ache inside. People bustled past, some laughing into phones, others clutching shopping bags, couples holding hands as if the whole world belonged to them. To me, the city had never felt lonelier. My phone buzzed twice in my pocket. First a call from Nina. Then a calendar reminder about the floral arrangement appointment for my wedding. I ignored both, shoving the phone back inside and keeping my gaze fixed on the pavement. The wedding. The word itself now sounded like a cruel joke. By the time I reached my apartment, exhaustion weighed on me so heavily that I nearly collapsed against the door. Inside, the silence was suffocating. I tossed the folder onto the sofa, its edges curling as though even the paper knew it was useless now. Something inside me snapped. I pulled out a suitcase, yanking open drawers, throwing clothes in without care for order. Dresses, coats, toiletries, flats, heels, it all blurred together. I paused only once, holding up the engagement ring Zayn had given me. The diamond sparkled mockingly under the yellow light. For a heartbeat, I considered leaving it on the coffee table for him to find. But then I slipped it into a side pocket of the suitcase instead, too bitter to wear it and too tired to make symbolic gestures. Within an hour, I was dragging the suitcase through the lobby, ignoring the concierge's curious glance. At the airport, I walked straight to the ticket counter. Next available flight to Yunnan, I said. The agent blinked. Do you mean Summit Lake or Lijiang? Summit Lake, I said without hesitation. It was a place I had begged Zayn to visit with me many times. A quiet lakeside town where the air was fresher, the nights quieter, where I could imagine a life stripped of boardroom politics and backroom betrayals. He had always smiled and said, "Too busy. Maybe later." There was no later. There was only now. Hours later, as the plane taxied down the runway, I finally let my phone ring out without answering when the hotel called again about the wedding. Then when they texted to remind me of the cancellation fees, I responded in a clipped tone, "Deduct it from the deposit." Zayn had paid the deposit. It wasn't my loss. By the time the plane lifted into the night sky, my chest ached with both despair and release. I must have drifted off mid-flight, because the jolt of turbulence ripped me awake with a force that sent my heart racing. The aircraft shuddered violently, rattling trays and overhead bins. Gasps filled the cabin, followed by the trembling voice of the flight attendant over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. We are experiencing temporary turbulence." Her reassurances did little. The plane lurched again and without thinking I grabbed the armrest. No, someone's arm. The man beside me turned his head, startled, but didn't pull away. "Easy," he said, his voice calm, deep, almost soothing against the roar of the engines. I tightened my grip anyway, eyes squeezed shut until the shuddering finally began to ease. Minutes passed like hours before the aircraft stabilized. Only then did I realize I was still clinging to him. Slowly I opened my eyes. A pair of dark eyes stared back at me, sharp and focused yet carrying a warmth I couldn't place. His features were striking, angular jaw, neatly styled hair, the faintest smile tugging at his lips. "You okay?" he asked. I jerked back, releasing his arm as heat flushed my cheeks. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." He chuckled softly. "Don't worry. It happens all the time." But there was something in his gaze, amusement mixed with recognition, that unsettled me. He leaned slightly closer. "Aryawan, right?" My pulse skipped. "How do you know my name?" "Jace Rowan," he said simply, extending a hand. "We had an appointment once. You stood me up." My mind scrambled. "Rowan. Investor." "Yes. 3 months ago, Tara had arranged a meeting with him when we were desperate for funding. But on the very morning of that meeting, Zayn had called, asking me to accompany him to an awards ceremony. I had cancelled on Jace with a vague excuse, prioritizing loyalty over business. And now here he was, seated next to me at 30,000 feet. I hesitated before shaking his hand. "Mr. Rowan, I apologize for that day. Something came up unexpectedly." His lips quirked upward. "Unexpectedly? I was at that very awards ceremony. Saw you sitting beside Zayn Luo. Hard to miss." My face burned. He had seen me then, which meant he had also seen the very moment Zayn had proposed to me on stage afterward. I swallowed, my voice faint. "Then you know." "I know you chose loyalty," Jace said, studying me. Though I can't say I understood it. His words struck something deep, an old wound layered over with excuses. I turned my gaze to the window, the vast expanse of clouds offering no escape. "Anyway," he continued lightly as though sensing my discomfort, "are you traveling for work or leisure?" "Neither," I said. "Just escape. Summit Lake." I nodded. A grin spread across his face. "What a coincidence." "Me too." I blinked at him. "You decided last minute," he said with a shrug. "No plans, no itinerary. Just wanted to breathe different air." His casual tone contrasted starkly with the rigid, pre-planned way Zayn lived. For a moment it disoriented me. "Miss Wen," Jace said, his tone suddenly teasing, "would you consider letting me tag along? I promise I won't slow you down. Think of me as a travel companion who doesn't complain." I raised a brow, instinctively defensive. I was planning to travel alone. Wander at my own pace. Bringing someone along would just complicate things. He tilted his head, feigning injury. "Complicate? I thought I'd be making things easier. You don't even know what my plans are. Then I'll follow yours. No questions, no complaints." His smile softened into something more genuine. "Sometimes the best journeys aren't about where you go, but who you go with." I looked at him carefully. The offer was absurd. Reckless. I barely knew this man. And yet, the thought of not being alone after everything I had endured was unexpectedly tempting. Still, pride made me cross my arms. "If you come, you follow my rules. No interference. No demands. You listen to everything I say." "Everything." His grin widened. "Sounds like a dictatorship." "Call it leadership," I shot back. He extended his hand again, eyes glinting. "Then lead on, team leader Wen." Despite myself, I laughed. The first genuine laugh that had escaped me in days. By the time the plane touched down, I had reluctantly agreed to let him join. Jace insisted on helping me retrieve my suitcase from the overhead bin, treating it as though it weighed nothing. Outside, the air of Yunnan wrapped around us. Cool, fragrant, laced with the faint scent of pine. We rented a car and drove to the guest house I had booked weeks earlier. At the reception desk of Willow Courtyard, however, the owner shook his head apologetically. "I'm sorry, miss. We're fully booked tonight. Only the room you reserved is available." I froze. But I called to ask for another. "You confirmed?" "I made a mistake," he admitted sheepishly. "I'm very sorry." I turned to Jace. "I'll find you another place." He raised his brows. "At this hour? In the dark? You'll abandon me to wolves. You'll survive." "I'm scared," he said dramatically, earning a baffled look from the owner. I sighed. "Fine. You can crash in my room. On one condition. We request another bed." His grin returned, boyish and disarming. Deal. You're really kind, team leader one. I wasn't. I was just too tired to argue. That night, after settling into the spacious room, 2 beds hastily arranged side by side, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The sounds of the lake outside whispered through the windows, gentle waves lapping against the shore. From the other bed, Jace's breathing soon evened into sleep. For the first time in days, I felt a strange sense of safety, as though the turbulence of the plane had forced fate's hand, leading me here, to this quiet moment with someone who had no claims on me, no history to burden me. And yet, deep in my chest, the ache still pulsed, reminding me that Zayn Luo's shadow wasn't so easily escaped. Still, for tonight, I let my eyes close and drifted into a fragile sleep, knowing tomorrow would bring something new. Perhaps hope, perhaps more heartache, but at least it would be different. The first morning at Willow Courtyard began with sunlight spilling through the floor-to-ceiling windows, scattering across the lake like shards of liquid glass. For a moment, lying there with the soft rustle of curtains and the steady rhythm of waves, I almost forgot the chaos I'd left behind. Almost. Then my phone buzzed. I ignored it at first, stretching beneath the crisp sheets, letting the scent of pine drift in. But the buzzing persisted, insistent, until finally I reached for it. 3 missed calls from Zayn Luo. My thumb hovered over the screen, wavering between decline and block. Before I could decide, the phone lit up again, his name flashing boldly. I answered, if only because some part of me wanted to hear his voice one last time. Arya, he barked the moment the line connected, his tone a mix of fury and disbelief. Where are you? Who are you with? Why did you cancel the wedding? His questions tumbled out in a torrent, his composure frayed. I closed my eyes, inhaling deeply. Zayn, I don't want to marry you anymore. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. You don't mean that, he said finally, voice dropping as though trying to coax me back. You're upset because I didn't invest in your company. Don't throw a tantrum over business. Once we're married, you won't need to worry about money ever again. I'll take care of you. My grip tightened on the phone. That lousy company, as you called it, is my life's work. But this isn't about that. This is about us. He scoffed, disbelief bleeding into mockery. You're being ridiculous. Cancel. You don't have the right. This is our wedding, not some contract you can walk away from. A bitter laugh escaped me. When it comes to love, if one person says stop, it stops. I don't need your permission. Another silence. Then faintly in the background I heard a woman's voice, light, lilting. Lydia. Zayn, come on. They're waiting. My heart twisted, but I steadied myself. Goodbye, Zayn. Before he could answer, I hung up. My hands trembled as I blocked his number, then one by one, all his contact methods. With each click, a strange weight lifted, as though chains I'd worn for years were finally falling away. When the last block was confirmed, I let the phone slip from my fingers onto the bedspread. My chest rose and fell with uneven breaths, but beneath the tremor there was relief. A clean cut. That evening, Jace and I returned to the guest house after exploring the lakeside markets. The day filled with color and chatter and laughter I hadn't expected to find so soon. The air was thinner up here, the sky wider. For the first time in weeks I felt like I could breathe. I was brushing my hair when Jace knocked gently on the door between our adjoining rooms. Come in, I said. He stepped inside, holding my phone in one hand. He called again earlier. I thought it might be urgent, so I answered. My head snapped up. You what? He raised both hands. I didn't mean to pry. He just kept calling. I thought it was important. And his expression softened. He misunderstood. Thought I was you. Demanded to know where you were. A sigh escaped me. I'm sorry you got dragged into this. But it doesn't matter. I've already blocked him. Will he give you trouble? He always has. I gave a small, tired smile. But it's over now. I won't let him drag me back. Jace studied me for a long moment, his eyes dark and unreadable. Then quietly, did you two break up? The words caught in my throat. Finally I nodded. Yes, we did. He exhaled as though he'd been holding that breath, then smiled, gentle, not triumphant. Then would you consider giving me a chance? I blinked, stunned. What? He grinned, carefree. Kidding. Mostly. Just wanted to cheer you up. But something in his eyes lingered, unspoken. Later that night when I crawled into bed, my mind replayed his words. Would you consider giving me a chance? Was it truly a joke? Or was there something more beneath his lightness? Either way, I was too raw to dissect it. I pulled the blankets around me and let exhaustion drag me under. The next morning as we sat at breakfast, my phone rang again, this time from my assistant, Tara. Her voice was trembling with excitement. Arya. President Luo agreed to invest in us after all. My fork froze midair. No, I said firmly. Reject it. There was a long pause. Reject it? But this could save us. Why would you? Because it isn't real, I said. He's not investing in us. He's trying to buy me back. But Arya, she pleaded, if we don't take it, the company. Her words trailed, but I could hear the fear beneath them. Fear I shared. My throat tightened. Let me think about it, Tara. Just hold off for now. When I hung up, Jace was watching me. Trouble? He asked. I forced a bitter smile. Before I left, I thought my company was finished. Now suddenly there's a chance to revive it. But I don't want his money. I don't want him tied to me anymore. Jace frowned thoughtfully. Then don't take it. I blinked at him. Just like that. Just like that, he said. If you don't approve of the investor, don't take their money. It'll cost more than it's worth. I dropped my gaze. But my team, they've poured everything into this. If I walk away out of pride, I'll be letting them down. His silence stretched. Then, what if you didn't have to? I looked up. He leaned forward, his eyes steady. Let me invest. I believe in you. Not just your numbers, not just your market strategy, you. My breath caught. You don't even know the full scope of my company. Then tell me, he said simply. Sell me on it. Here and now. 2 hours later, the dining table of Willow Courtyard was buried under printouts and spreadsheets as I explained everything. Our product, our projections, our customers, our pain points. Jace listened without interrupting, nodding, occasionally jotting notes. When I finished, my voice hoarse, he smiled. I'm in. Just like that. We drafted an agreement on my laptop, his signature bold and decisive at the bottom. I called Tara, my hands trembling with joy. Tara, I said breathless, our company is saved. She gasped. You accepted Luo's deal? No. I found a new investor. Arya, that's... Her voice cracked, equal parts relief and awe. That's incredible. In the background I heard a familiar voice. Zayn's. My stomach dropped. Arya, he barked through Tara's phone, his voice tinny with distance. Where are you? Why won't you accept my investment? I'm the only one willing to save your sinking ship. Tara stammered. President Luo, this is. Don't trouble her, I cut in sharply. Zayn, my company has already found new backing. You're no longer needed. Stay away from my employees. His voice softened, mockingly tender. Arya, don't be stubborn. I don't want you working so hard. Marry me and just be my wife. I'll handle everything. My blood ran cold. Zayn, you're despicable. We're done. Stay out of my life and my company, or I'll make sure security throws you out. I ended the call, slamming the phone onto the table, my hands shaking. Across from me, Jace sat quietly, watching, his gaze cool. Seems like Mr. Luo doesn't understand the word, no. No, I said, my voice firming with each syllable. But he will. That night as I collapsed into bed, exhaustion swirled with something else. For the first time in weeks I felt a strange sense of control. The cord had been cut clean and final. I had chosen. Not him. Not compromise. Myself. And as I drifted to sleep with the soft murmur of the lake outside, I knew one thing for certain. Zayn Luo's shadow no longer owned me. The morning after Jace signed the agreement, I woke earlier than usual. For once, I didn't feel the heavy fog of dread that had accompanied me for weeks. Instead, there was a clarity like the air after a storm. I pulled open the curtains and stood by the window. The lake shimmered in the early light, the surface so still it mirrored the mountains in the distance. It reminded me of why I had come here, to breathe, to find myself again. And yet my phone lay on the nightstand, buzzing with new messages. Reality was calling me back. I scrolled through them. Tara had sent a dozen updates about pending invoices, the HR team wanted guidance about salaries, and Nina had sent a barrage of voice notes alternating between concern, gossip, and encouragement. At the bottom was one unread message from an unknown number. I didn't need to open it to know it was from Zayn. The pit in my stomach told me. I pressed delete without listening. At breakfast, Jace was already at the table, laptop open, sleeves rolled up, a mug of black coffee beside him. He looked less like a man on vacation and more like an investor already at work. "Morning, team leader Win," he said with a grin as I sat down. "I took the liberty of going through your numbers again. We need to talk strategy." I raised a brow. "Didn't you say you'd follow my lead without interference?" He tilted his head, playful. "True. But I never said I'd keep quiet if I had ideas." I laughed despite myself, taking a sip of coffee. "Fine. Let's hear it." And just like that, breakfast turned into a boardroom session. Jace's insights were sharp, his questions cutting but constructive. He pointed out blind spots in my expansion plan, suggested tweaks to the marketing strategy, and even offered to introduce me to 2 contacts in Singapore who could help with distribution. By the end of the meal, I was scribbling notes furiously, my mind buzzing with possibility. When we finally closed our laptops, he leaned back with a satisfied smile. "See? You're not doomed. You just needed someone to believe in you." I met his gaze, something warm stirring in my chest. "Thank you. Not just for the investment, but for this. For treating me like I matter." His smile softened. "Arya, you do matter. More than you think." The next week blurred into a whirlwind. We cut our trip short and returned to the city, diving headfirst into saving the company. I gathered my team in the cramped office, the tension in the room so thick you could slice it. They were expecting bad news, layoffs, closure, the end of everything we had built. But instead I stood before them with Jace at my side and announced the new investment. For a moment, silence reigned. Then relief rippled through the room. Smiles broke out, followed by applause and in some corners, tears. "Does this mean we're saved?" one of the interns asked, voice trembling. "Yes," I said firmly. "Not just saved. We're going to grow stronger than before." Tara, who had been holding herself together with sheer willpower, finally let out a sob of relief. She clapped a hand over her mouth, embarrassed, but I pulled her into a hug. "We did it," I whispered. "We're not done yet." When I looked up, Jace was watching me with that steady gaze again, as though he saw not just the CEO I was trying to be, but the woman beneath it all. Of course, Zayn didn't stay silent. 3 days later, he stormed into our office uninvited, his presence sucking the air out of the room. Employees froze as he marched toward me, his expensive cologne preceding him. His expression was thunderous, but his tone was deceptively smooth. "Arya," he said, ignoring everyone else. "Can we talk?" I straightened. "There's nothing left to talk about." He smirked as if amused by my defiance. "Don't be rash. You know I can offer far more than whatever scraps Rowan threw at you. Come back and everything you want, your company, your future, your comfort, it'll all be yours." His voice carried across the room, his words chosen to sting in front of my team. But instead of shrinking, I stepped closer, my voice clear. "This company isn't yours to buy, Zayn. It's mine. And we don't need your money." Gasps rippled among the employees, but I didn't waver. Zayn's mask cracked. For the first time I saw the raw anger beneath. "You'll regret this," he hissed. "When your little investor loses interest, don't come crawling back." Before I could reply, Jace rose from where he had been calmly reviewing files. He closed the folder with deliberate care and stepped forward, his presence quiet but commanding. "Funny," he said coolly, "because I don't recall seeing Luo Capital on the term sheet. And unless I'm mistaken, you're trespassing." Zayn turned, eyes narrowing. "This isn't your fight, Rowan." "On the contrary," Jace said evenly, "I just invested in this company. That makes it my fight." The 2 men stood toe to toe, tension crackling. My heart pounded, but I forced myself between them. "That's enough," I snapped. "Zayn, leave. Or I'll have security escort you out." For a moment he looked as though he might defy me. But then his gaze swept the room, at the employees watching, at Jace's unwavering stance at me, and something in his eyes shifted. Contempt. "Fine," he spat. "But remember, Arya, you'll always be the girl who clung to me when I was nothing. Don't pretend you can erase that." With that he turned and strode out, leaving the office in uneasy silence. After he left, I exhaled shakily, only realizing then how tightly I'd been holding myself together. Jace touched my arm lightly. "You okay?" I nodded. "Better than I thought I'd be." You were incredible, he said softly. Standing up to him like that in front of everyone? That wasn't just leadership. That was strength. Heat flushed my cheeks, but I met his gaze steadily. I'm done being his shadow. Good, he murmured. The days that followed were grueling but different. With Jace's backing and guidance, our company began to stabilize. Bills were paid. Projects resumed. And slowly, confidence returned to my team. One evening, after a particularly long day, we gathered in the break room with cheap takeout and lukewarm sodas to celebrate the first profitable week since the crisis began. It wasn't champagne and crystal flutes. It was styrofoam boxes and laughter. But it was real. When I raised my cup for a toast, my voice wavered with emotion. To us. To surviving. To proving everyone wrong. The room erupted in cheers. And as my eyes met Jace's across the table, something inside me stirred again. Something I had buried for too long. Hope. Later that night, as the office emptied, I lingered behind, staring out at the city lights. Jace joined me quietly, hands in his pockets. You've done something incredible, he said. We've done it, I corrected. He smiled faintly. No. I just gave you the spark. You lit the fire. For a long moment we stood there in silence, the city sprawling before us. Then he turned, his expression more serious than I'd ever seen. Arya, he said softly, I know you've been through hell. And I'm not asking for anything now. But someday when you're ready, I hope you'll see that not everyone wants to cage you. Some of us just want to see you fly. My chest tightened. I wanted to reply, but the words tangled in my throat. So instead I whispered, thank you. And for now that was enough. That night as I lay in bed I thought of how far I had come. From waiting by the door for a man who never posted my name, to standing at the head of a company that had refused to die. From begging for scraps of affection, to choosing someone who believed in my worth without demanding anything in return. The cord had been cut. Now for the first time I was free to tie my own knots. The weeks after Zayn stormed out of my office passed like a blur, but for the first time in years, it was a blur I welcomed. Every day began earlier and ended later. Meetings stretched past midnight, emails piled into dawn, and deadlines pressed hard against our sanity. But there was one critical difference. This time we were moving forward. Not scrambling to survive. Not gasping for air. We were building again. And I wasn't building alone. Jace had slipped into our company with a quiet steadiness that shocked me. At first my employees had been wary. After all, investors had always meant trouble. Scrutiny, control, cold demands for returns. But Jace wasn't like that. He was there in the trenches with us. Sitting in on marketing brainstorms, not to dictate but to listen. Offering contacts when we hit dead ends with suppliers. Walking through product demos with genuine curiosity. Asking questions that forced us to think sharper, bolder. He even rolled up his sleeves one night to help the dev team test bugs, laughing as he broke our app twice in under 10 minutes. You owe me dinner for finding these, he joked. The team adored him within days. And I tried not to adore him too. One Friday evening as twilight bled across the city, Tara burst into my office with wide eyes. Arya, you need to see this. She shoved a printed report into my hands. My eyes skimmed the figures. Then widened. Positive cash flow. For the first time in months we weren't bleeding money. We weren't hovering at the cliff's edge. We had earned more this week than we had spent. My throat tightened and for a moment I couldn't breathe. When I looked up, my team was crowded in the doorway, holding their breath as though waiting for a verdict. I raised the paper. We're profitable. The cheer that erupted nearly shook the walls. People laughed, cried, hugged one another. Tara collapsed into a chair, clutching her head as tears streamed down her cheeks. It's real, she whispered. We actually did it. I wiped my eyes quickly before anyone could see. Across the room, Jace leaned against the doorframe, watching the scene unfold with a quiet smile. When our eyes met, he lifted his coffee cup in a silent toast. Thank you. We decided to celebrate that night with whatever we had on hand, lukewarm sodas, leftover pastries from the break room, a cake Tara ran out and bought at the last minute. I gave a small toast, my voice shaking as I looked at each face. This wasn't me. This was all of us. Every sleepless night, every sacrifice, every refusal to give up. We did this together. Jace stepped forward then, placing a hand lightly on my shoulder. Correction, he said. It was you who refused to quit when everyone else walked away. You're the reason this company is still standing." The team cheered again, but my chest burned with a different kind of warmth. One that had nothing to do with financial figures. In the weeks that followed, things only improved. With Jace's contacts, we secured partnerships in Singapore and Hong Kong. Our user base began to grow steadily, our brand gaining recognition beyond the small niche we had once occupied. One afternoon, while sorting through emails, I found an invitation to a business leadership summit. The subject line read, "Nominee for Most Influential Women in Business." For a long moment I stared at it, convinced it was a mistake. Then I saw the note attached. Recommended by Jace Rowan. My heart skipped. I called him into my office immediately. "What is this?" I asked, holding up the email. He gave me his usual unbothered grin. "Exactly what it says. I nominated you." "Why?" I demanded, half breathless. "Because you deserve it," he said simply. "Because you're brilliant and determined, and the world should see that. You've been hiding your light for too long." My throat went dry. "You shouldn't use your influence on me." "Arya," he said softly, eyes steady on mine, "I'd use everything I have to make sure you get what you deserve. Not because you need me, but because I believe in you." I didn't know what to say. So I just whispered, "Thank you." Not everyone was thrilled with my nomination. A week later, I saw the public list of candidates, and nearly dropped my phone when I spotted Lydia Fong's name. No need to guess who had recommended her. Zayn. The press release made it clear. Luo Capital nominates Vice President Lydia Fong for her leadership in investment strategy. The irony nearly made me choke. Leadership? She'd been in the company for less than 6 months. But the message was clear. Zayn was pushing Lydia into the spotlight, perhaps as a way to counter me. When I mentioned it to Jace, he only shrugged. "Let her. You'll outshine her without even trying." A week later, whispers began trickling into my inbox from contacts at Luo Capital. Rumors that Lydia and Zayn weren't as harmonious as they appeared. That he micromanaged her decisions, rejected her proposals, refused to let her breathe. I wasn't surprised. Zayn was brilliant, but he was also controlling. He didn't trust anyone's vision but his own. I had lived under that suffocating weight for years. Hearing that Lydia now bore it almost made me pity her. Almost. One night after another long day, I found Jace still in the office, hunched over a presentation draft. His tie was loose, his hair slightly mussed, but he was still focused, scribbling notes. "You should go home," I said, leaning against the doorway. "Even investors need sleep." He looked up, grinning. "Says the woman still here at midnight." I laughed and crossed the room, peering over his shoulder. "What is this?" "A mock pitch deck," he said. "For the summit. If they ask about your company, you'll want clean slides." My heart twisted at the thoughtfulness of it. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," he cut in. "Because you matter. And because I want the world to see you the way I do." The air between us thickened, the hum of city lights outside muffled by the silence inside. His gaze lingered on me, intense enough that I had to look away. I busied myself with flipping through the slides, though my pulse raced. The night of the leadership summit came faster than I expected. I wore a long black gown, simple but elegant, with a pearl necklace Jace had insisted on buying. "You deserve to shine," he'd said, dragging me to the mall despite my protests. When I stepped into the venue with him at my side, cameras flashed. Reporters murmured. For the first time, I wasn't Zayn Luo's fiancée in the background. I was Arya Wenxiao nominee, a woman who had clawed her way back from ruin. And yet fate wasn't about to let me forget the past. Because across the lobby I saw them. Zayn in his sharp tailored suit. Lydia radiant in a crimson gown. His hand rested on her back, guiding her forward like she was his prized jewel. But when his gaze found me, his smile faltered. Our eyes locked. And for the first time I wasn't the one shrinking. I lifted my chin, slipped my arm through Jace's and walked forward with steady steps. Later, as we took our seats in the auditorium, I felt the tension crackle like static. Zayn sat only a few rows away, Lydia whispering into his ear. When the announcer finally read the results, my breath caught. "Congratulations to this year's most influential female business leader. Arya won." Applause thundered. Cameras flashed. Jace grinned and pulled me into a brief, celebratory hug before I made my way onto the stage. I accepted the award, gave my speech and stepped down, my hands trembling from adrenaline. As I returned to my seat, Jace leaned in and whispered, "See? The world finally sees you. Exactly as you are." My heart swelled and for once I believed him. That night, lying in bed with the award still gleaming on my dresser, I realized something profound. For years I had begged to be acknowledged. By Zayn. By his family. By the business world that dismissed me as a mere placeholder. But tonight I hadn't needed anyone's permission to shine. I had done it myself. With my team. With Jace by my side, not above me, not in front of me, but beside me. And for the first time in my life I slept without dreams of proving myself. As I already had. The applause was still echoing in my ears when I stepped off the stage, clutching the crystal plaque that declared me most influential female business leader. Its weight felt unreal in my hands, heavy yet fragile, like the culmination of years of struggle crystallized into one shining object. But it wasn't the award itself that made my pulse race. It was the sea of faces watching, cameras flashing, and the knowledge that every lens was capturing me. Me not as Zayn Luo's forgotten fiancé but as Arya Wensio's survivor builder. When I returned to my seat, Jace rose slightly, pulling me into a quick embrace. His arm lingered around my shoulders a beat longer than necessary, his voice low against my ear. "You did it," he murmured. "No," I whispered back. "We did it." He pulled back with a smile that made my chest ache in ways I wasn't ready to admit. The rest of the ceremony blurred, names and speeches drifting past me. My focus was shattered the moment I caught sight of Zayn 2 rows ahead. His profile was sharp as ever, his posture rigid, but his jaw was clenched so tightly I could see the muscle ticking. Lydia sat beside him, her crimson gown catching the light like a warning flare. She clapped politely when my name was announced, but her eyes, when they darted toward me, glinted with something sharper than envy. Resentment. I knew that look. I'd worn it once myself when I lived in someone else's shadow. After the ceremony ended, the lobby turned into a storm of flashes, microphones and congratulatory chatter. I had barely stepped out when a reporter thrust a recorder toward me. "Ms. Wen, congratulations. How does it feel to surpass seasoned leaders like Vice President Fong of Luo Capital?" The crowd hushed, hungry for conflict. I smiled politely, adjusting the award in my hands. It feels humbling to be recognized. But tonight isn't about surpassing anyone. It's about celebrating all the women in this room who continue to push boundaries in business. A diplomatic answer. Safe. But I felt Zayn's gaze burning into me from across the lobby, and I knew my very existence on that stage had been a blow he hadn't anticipated. I tried to slip away quietly, but fate had other plans. "Arya." The voice was unmistakable. Smooth, commanding, the same one that had once anchored me and now grated like glass. I turned. Zayn stood a few feet away, Lydia at his side. He looked impeccable, but there was a tightness around his eyes, a storm he was barely containing. "Congratulations," he said, his tone cordial but edged. "Thank you," I replied evenly. "Enjoy the evening." I moved to walk past, but he shifted, blocking my path with a subtle step. "Can we talk?" "No," I said bluntly. Lydia's lips curved in a sharp smile. "Don't be rude, Arya. Zayn's just trying to be gracious." I met her gaze coolly. "Funny. I don't recall asking for his grace." Her smile faltered. Before the tension could escalate, Jace appeared at my side, his hand brushing the small of my back. "Problem here." His tone was light, but his presence was a shield, solid and unyielding. Zayn's eyes flicked to Jace, narrowing. "Still playing knight, Rowan? Be careful. Some damsels aren't worth rescuing." My blood boiled, but Jace only chuckled softly. "Lucky for me, Arya's no damsel. And she doesn't need rescuing." The air between them crackled, two worlds colliding in the lobby of a hotel ballroom. Reporters circled like sharks, cameras raised, eager for drama. I straightened my shoulders, raising my chin. This conversation is over. And with that I walked past them, Jace's hands steady at my back, leaving the cameras buzzing with speculation. In the car afterward, silence stretched between us, broken only by the city lights flickering past. Finally Jace spoke. "You handled that perfectly." I let out a shaky laugh. "I feel like I'm living in a soap opera." He glanced at me, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "If this were a soap opera, The audience would already be rooting for you. Against them? I asked. He shook his head. For you. Just you. The words lingered, wrapping around me like a warmth I wasn't sure I deserved. The next week the fallout began. News outlets splashed side-by-side photos of me holding the award and Lydia standing stiffly beside Zayn. Headlines speculated on rivalry, betrayal, and the battle of the businesswomen. One article called me the dark horse who outshone Luo Capital's rising star. Another claimed Zayn's cold demeanor during the ceremony was proof of a fractured relationship. I tried to ignore it, but my inbox flooded with interview requests. Investors who had once ignored me were suddenly calling. Invitations poured in for panels, summits, features. For once people wanted me. Inside Luo Capital, however, things weren't as rosy. Through contacts, I learned Lydia's position was unraveling. Zayn, true to form, had begun undermining her decisions, dismissing her suggestions in meetings, even taking credit for her work. Word is she's suffocating, Tara reported one afternoon, sliding a gossip-laden email across my desk. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? I sighed, pushing it aside. It's not my concern anymore. But late at night I found myself thinking about Lydia. About how I had once been where she stood, clinging to Zayn's orbit, believing proximity to his power equaled security. I wondered if she realized yet that Zayn didn't want partners. He wanted possessions. Meanwhile, my company was blooming. With Jace's guidance, we secured 2 major contracts. Revenue climbed steadily, morale soared, and for the first time my team began to believe not just in survival but in growth. At the end of one particularly long day, we held a small celebration in the office. Laughter filled the air, takeout boxes littered the tables, and Jace stood quietly at the edge, watching with a faint smile. I approached him with a soda can, nudging his arm. You're too quiet tonight. He shrugged. I like watching you lead. They look at you like you hung the stars. His words made my cheeks warm. They look at you the same way. He tilted his head, his eyes locking on mine. No. They look at me with respect. They look at you with love. The air shifted, heavier, charged. I opened my mouth, but the words tangled. He smiled softly, saving me. Don't overthink it. Just let yourself breathe, Arya. You've earned it. But breathing wasn't so simple. 2 nights later, my phone buzzed with a message that turned my stomach. Meet me. One last time. You owe me that much. Zayn. I stared at it for a long time, the past tugging at me like chains I thought I'd broken. Jace noticed my silence at dinner. What is it? He asked. Nothing, I lied, shoving the phone away. But in truth I knew, Reckoning wasn't finished. Not yet. A week later, I found myself standing outside a high-rise bar where Zayn had demanded to meet. I hadn't told Jace. I told myself it was because I didn't want to drag him into more drama, but deep down I knew it was pride. I needed to face Zayn alone. When I stepped inside, Zayn was already there, drink in hand, his expression a carefully constructed mask. Arya, he said smoothly. You look beautiful. I sat opposite him, unflinching. Get to the point. He leaned forward. Leave Rowan. Come back. We belong together. You know it. My laugh was sharp, bitter. Belong? I was never yours to keep, Zayn. His eyes darkened. You'll regret this. He doesn't love you. He's using you. I'm the only one who's ever. I cut him off. You're wrong. About him. About me. About everything. I stood, my voice steady. I'm not your shadow anymore. I don't need your name, your money, or your validation. I have my own. For once, Zayn was speechless. I walked away, my heart hammering, the weight of years lifting with each step. When I returned to the guest house that night, Jace was waiting outside, leaning against the car. He didn't ask where I'd been. He didn't need to. Instead, he said quietly, Did you cut the last thread? I nodded, tears burning my eyes. Good, he said softly. Then after a pause, because I want to tie a new one. My breath caught. Arya, he continued, his eyes never leaving mine, I don't just want to be your investor. I want to be the one who stands beside you. Not in front. Not behind. Beside. Always. The night air stilled. The lake shimmered in the distance. And for the first time I let myself believe I could want that too. The morning after I walked away from Zayn for the last time, the world felt different. The city was the same. The same traffic snarls, the same neon billboards, the same impatient crowd jostling through crosswalks. But for me something had shifted. For years I had carried Zayn like a shadow across my skin. No matter what I did, his presence loomed. Now for the first time that shadow had burned away. I was free. Freedom didn't mean stillness. The weeks that followed were relentless. Investors called, media outlets hounded, and the summit's publicity brought more opportunities than I could manage. My company expanded into new markets, secured partnerships that once felt impossible, and even attracted talent from firms that had dismissed us as a sinking ship. In boardrooms and offices, people began to look at me not as the woman who once clung to Luo Capital's CEO, but as Arya Wen, strategist, leader, builder. And yet, in quiet moments when the clamor subsided, I found my thoughts drifting to Jace. Jace who had stepped in when everyone else stepped out. Jace who believed in me without conditions. Jace who stood beside me, never above, never behind. I had told myself not to blur the lines between investor and something more. But every time his eyes lingered on mine, every time his laugh carried across the office, every time he leaned close during late-night work sessions, I felt the tether between us tighten. And I wasn't sure how much longer I could ignore it. The decision came not from me but from him. One crisp morning as winter retreated into the arms of spring, Jace knocked on my office door. He wore his usual suit, but something about the way his tie was loosened and his smile carefully measured told me this wasn't business. "Pack a bag," he said simply. I raised a brow. "Excuse me." "Pack a bag," he repeated. "We're going on a trip. Just for a few days." I frowned. "Jace, we're in the middle of negotiations with Arya." His voice softened. "You've been fighting nonstop. For your company. For your independence. For your future. You've won. Now let yourself breathe. Please." The earnestness in his gaze undid me. Against every instinct to keep control, I found myself nodding. 2 days later we were back in Yunnan. This time spring had transformed the landscape. The lake shimmered under clear skies, surrounded by blossoms that painted the air with fragrance. Villagers laughed as they hung lanterns in preparation for a local festival, and the snow-capped peaks in the distance seemed sharper, prouder, as though watching over us. We checked into a familiar guest house, Willow Courtyard. The owner greeted us with a knowing smile. "Back again, Mr. Rowan, Miss Wen?" Heat rushed to my cheeks. Jace only chuckled. "Of course. This place holds good memories." Good memories. I thought back to that first night of turbulence, the extra bed, the awkward distance. How far we had come. The following morning, Jace suggested a hike to a nearby peak overlooking the entire lake. "Best view in Yunnan," he promised. I agreed, though halfway up the steep trail I was cursing his enthusiasm. My legs ached, my lungs burned, and my once pristine sneakers were coated in dust. "Remind me," I panted, "why we couldn't just admire the view from the guest house balcony?" He grinned over his shoulder. "Because the best things in life make you work for them." I rolled my eyes, but deep down I knew he wasn't just talking about mountains. When we finally reached the summit, the sight stole my breath more than the climb had. The entire valley stretched beneath us. The lake glittering like a jewel, fields of rapeseed flowers blazing golden, villages dotting the landscape like brushstrokes. The air was crisp, thin, carrying the faint scent of pine and wildflowers. For a long moment we stood in silence, soaking in the vastness. Then Jace turned to me. "Arya," he said softly, his expression unreadable. "Do you remember the first time we met?" I laughed. "On a plane while I was practically crushing your arm during turbulence?" He smiled. "Before that. We had an appointment once. You stood me up." I sobered. "I remember. I chose Zayn. And yet here we are," he said. "Life has a strange way of bringing people back around." He reached into his jacket pocket then. My heart stuttered. When his hand emerged, it held a small velvet box. My breath caught. "Arya Wen," he said, dropping to one knee on the mountaintop, the vast world sprawling behind him. "You've spent years giving everything to others. Standing in shadows. Fighting battles alone. I don't want to cage you or rescue you or own you. I just want to walk beside you. To be the one who catches you when turbulence shakes your world, and the one who celebrates when you stand on summits like this." He opened the box. Inside, nestled against velvet, was a diamond ring that caught the sunlight and scattered it like 1,000 promises. "Marry me," Jace whispered. "Not because you need me, but because I want to spend my life proving you never needed anyone, and loving you for exactly who you are." Tears blurred my vision before I could stop them. Memories rushed through me. Nights waiting for Zayn to come home, mornings begging for scraps of acknowledgement, years of silence on social media that erased me from his world. And now here was Jace, not asking me to hide, not asking me to shrink, not asking me to compromise, but asking me to shine. I dropped to my knees before him, my voice breaking. Yes. 1,000 times yes. His grin lit up brighter than the mountains behind him. He slid the ring onto my finger, his hands trembling slightly, and before I could say another word, his lips were on mine. The kiss was different from anything I had known. Not desperate, not possessive, but steady. Certain. A vow in itself. When we finally pulled apart, laughter bubbled from my chest, mingling with tears. "Jace Rowan, you just ruined my makeup." "Good," he murmured, brushing a tear away with his thumb. "You look more beautiful without it anyway." We hiked down the mountain hand in hand, the ring glinting every time sunlight hit it. Villagers we passed smiled knowingly, as though they had seen countless proposals on these trails. Children pointed at us, giggling, and I couldn't help laughing too. That evening we returned to Willow Courtyard, where the owner insisted on preparing a special meal. Lanterns glowed overhead, the courtyard bathed in golden light. As we ate, Jace raised his glass. "To new beginnings." I clinked mine against his. "To building, breathing, and breaking through." He chuckled. "Sounds like a company slogan." "Maybe it should be," I teased. But inside I knew it was more than that. It was the story of my life. Weeks later, back in the city, life resumed its relentless pace. But everything felt different now. I walked into boardrooms not as someone fighting for scraps of validation, but as a woman with her own name, her own company, her own worth. The press no longer introduced me as former fiancée of Zayn Luo. They called me Arya Wen, award-winning entrepreneur. And at night, when exhaustion weighed heavy, I returned home to Jace. Not a savior, not a replacement, but a partner. The man who had seen me at my weakest and never once asked me to be smaller. The man who had knelt on a mountaintop and promised to stand beside me always. One evening, as I scrolled absent-mindedly through social media, I stumbled upon a new post from Zayn. A photo of him alone in his office, glass of whiskey in hand, captioned, "Some things slip away before you realize they were your pride." For the first time it didn't sting. I set the phone aside, turned, and found Jace watching me from the kitchen, his sleeves rolled up, a dish towel in his hand. He smiled. "Everything okay?" I looked at him, really looked, and felt the truth settle deep in my bones. "Yes," I said simply. "Everything is perfect." And I meant it. That night, as I lay beside Jace, the ring glinting faintly in the moonlight, I thought about the girl I had once been. The one who waited by doors, who begged to be posted on social media, who clung to someone else's pride. She was gone. In her place stood a woman who had chosen herself. Who had chosen a partner who saw her, truly saw her. And for the first time in my life I didn't just feel loved. I felt free. The end.